Jai Jai Shri Radhe, Sab Vaishnav ko Jai Shri Krishna. The 252 Vaishnava disciples of Sri Gosaiji, number 60, day 66, Varta 44. Shyam, continuing from yesterday. Sri Gosaiji appreciated Shyamdas's simple character. Shyamdas got the idea to tour around the land of Vraja, and he asked Sri Gosaiji's permission to do so. Sri Gosaiji granted his permission, and Shyamdas set off to tour around Vraja after bowing to his guru. When he had completed his journey, he returned to Srinathadwara and had the holy site of Sri Giriraji and went to Sri Gosaiji. Shyamdas began to live there, and Sri Gosaiji gave him Seva in the flower room to make the Lord's garlands. Shyamdas inquired of Sri Gosaiji as to the transcendental form of flowers. Sri Gosaiji replied that flowers are the innermost hearts of the Vraja gopis and that they should always get to touch the Lord's body. Shyamdas was delighted to learn this, and being aware of their exalted position, he never allowed any flower to be touched by his feet. He never touched them without washing his hands. He did everything he could not to let the flowers fade. Another day he asked Sri Gosaiji, when this is the true form of the flowers, then how come we stick needles into them to make the garlands? Sri Gosaiji replied that the needle is like a guide that always keeps their hearts directed exclusively towards their loving relationship with the Lord. That instrument of guidance delights their hearts and makes their love blossom. They feel that with this guiding reminder they will always remember their relationship to the Lord, to the Beloved, and soon be accepted by him. Hearing this, Shyamdas's doubts were all removed, and he began to make his seva with this spiritual understanding and much love. One day Shyamdas had the vision of group upon group of Vraja flowers in the flower room, Vraja gopis in the flower room. He spoke up and said that he did not recognize them. They replied that they all became part of the flower garlands that he prepared, and that they were very happy with the love in his heart, and that out of respect for Sri Gosaiji they were allowing him to have their direct sight. They told him to ask something of them. He folded his hands in supplication and asked that he never leave this seva nor go elsewhere. The gopis blessed him with such consent. Shyamdas recounted all of this to Sri Gosaiji, who said, those souls who have reached the last time they need to take birth, from them Sri Thakurji does not remain distant. This path has appeared for such souls. After this, and until Shyamdas lived, he never had any other distracted thought. He was serving the Lord when he left his body. Some Vaishnavas performed his last rites. The Vaishnavas then told Sri Gosaiji what had happened. When he heard that he praised Shyamdas profusely. He said, see, what an innocent and straight nature he had. He didn't even think about his body. Thus concludes Varta 44, the story of Shyamdas, who was the recipient of Sri Gosaiji's great grace and an accomplished Vaishnava. Sri Gosaiji was always pleased with him. Sri Gosaiji took Shyamdas into his shelter and showed him his true form. This story can never be fully told. Prakash. The teaching given in this story is that every part of the Lord's seva is actually non-different from the Lord himself and his Leela. A devotee who serves with this consciousness will experience this for sure. Of this there is no doubt. Varta 45. The story of Chajjo, a Sanarya Brahmin who was the personal servant of Bhamani Bahuji. Bhav Prakash. She is a devotee of Rajasi disposition. In the eternal Leela her name is Kalahantarita, and she likes to quarrel. She manifests from Bhadra and is thus a form of her divine loving mood. She was born into a family of Sanadya Brahmins in Mathura. When she was 10 years old, her parents married her off to a boy within their caste. She was 55 when her husband died. She did not get on with anyone in her family because she argued with them all. Nobody would speak to her. Then she came to Gokul and was initiated by Sri Gosaiji. Sri Gosaiji instructed her to serve Bhamani Bahuji. She served her very nicely, and Bhamani Bahuji was very pleased with her. However, she was still very argumentative, and all of Sri Gosaiji's sons and everyone else in his house were displeased with her. Part 1. Chajjo was always quarrelling with Sri Gosaiji's sons. Sri Girdaji and Sri Gosaiji were particularly peeved with her. One day Sri Gosaiji got so annoyed that he called her, Oi, will someone please cut off this rascal woman's nose? Translator's note. This does not indicate a physical act, but rather a severe reprimanding, vituperation in which the subject should be brought down a peg. One of Sri Gosaiji's disciples, named Bhagawant, was present there. He thought to himself that he should be the one to vituperate Chajjo, but that he would do it in private so that no one would see. One day he took her to one side and severely reprimanded her. Then he left from there. Sri Guruji heard this but said nothing. Sri Bhamani Betaji asked Sri Guruji to teach Chudjo the meaning of this, but he refused, saying that it was out of his hands because she was his father's disciple. Then Sri Gosaiji came to know of all this. When he came out of Seva, he expressed great anger towards the Vaishnav, Bhagawant, but he could not find him. And quite some time later, Bhagawant came to Sri Gosaiji in the evening and bowed down to him. Sri Gosaiji told him off, saying, "O you of low caste, why did you take it upon yourself to vituperate that Brahmini Chudjo? Who told you to do so?" Bhagawant supplicated Sri Gosaiji. "O great Maharaj, what should I have done? It was your command. How could the words coming from your mouth be untrue?" Sri Gosaiji could then say nothing. Bhagawant engaged himself in his Guru's service. Bhav Prakash. This story teaches that Sri Gosaiji is the Supreme Lord himself, and therefore his speech could never be untrue. It also shows how compassionate the Lord is. If his devotee offers him a tiny seva, he regards it as being as huge as Mount Meru, and if they make an offence as huge as the ocean, he sees it as just a tiny drop. Surdas has written a pad in Rag Dhanashri. Oh, look at Sri Hari's nature. This crest jewel is a profound ocean of generosity, who counts his devotee's smallest quality to be as large as Mount Meru, and discounts his servant's ocean of offences as being just a tiny drop. Even if his devotee turns away from him, his lotus-like joyous face looks at them and graces them, as if they had never been away. He runs behind the devotees to allay their pain of separation. Surdas Ji now sings, "Only the most unfortunate fool would turn his back on such a lord." Therefore Sri Gosaiji was most kind and forgave all that Brahmini's offences after vituperating her but once. Otherwise she would have had no chance to progress in Seva. His teaching to her was pure grace, and her offences were pardoned. One should be very careful not to offend members of Sri Vallabhacharyaji's lineage. This thus concludes Varta 45, the story of Chudjo, who was a recipient of great grace and an accomplished Vaishnava. Her tale has no end. सब वैष्णवों को जय श्री कृष्ण। आज के आनंद की जय। जय जय श्री राधे।